Hey,
Yeah.
if you got this part of the video, you've got the live unedited edition, Home Gadget Geeks. It's Friday night. I only say that once a year, Friday night, and I did go back last year and looked, and we did do this with Sammie. Friday night, it's November 25th, and the month of November has flown by. It's 8 p.m. or just a smidge before 8 p.m. in the Central Time Zone. Got this any other time on YouTube. You've got the recorded version, and that's okay. Hang tight. We'll get started here in just a second. I know I promised Sammie, but Sammie's not feeling well. She had a pretty tough week, and I think she muscled through Thanksgiving yesterday. So Phil said, "Hey, this would be fun. Maybe I'll join you." And so Phil, it was a good backup. Thanks for saying yes.
Yep.
We'll get started here in just a few minutes. We're going to move the whiskey pour into the show because it's got some significance into what we're going to talk about tonight. So thanks for coming out, Brian. Thanks for checking in the chat room. Brian, I tell you, I've had my eye on that $250. We're talking about Black Friday deals, and Best Buy is running the Xbox Series S for $250, which is their low end 512. You know, it's not a beefy box, but it would get me the upgraded Xbox. You know, I have the model behind it that still has a DVD drive in it. That Phil, we still have a ton of DVDs. At one point, I'd ripped those and then that server went away, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to re-rip those again. We watch DVDs every once in a while.
You can't always find everything on streaming.
No, but I watched a little bit of Groundhog Day today, which was on YouTube, and yeah, Brian says a colleague of his picked up the Series S at $250. It's like if you didn't have an Xbox and you wanted one, that seemed like to be the right way to get in. You adding water to that?
Yeah, it's Elijah Craig barrel proof. So.
Oh, I got you.
It's pretty stout. It's pretty stout. I'm not feeling that strong tonight.
Yeah, he says. Brian says he didn't think the Series S has a disc drive. It doesn't. So I would move the Xbox. I have the Xbox back here at the desk. I almost never use it. If we need a DVD player, we'll just take it in there. But I can just take it in there and leave it in there. Although we probably haven't watched a DVD in 6 months or a year, so that's going to be one of those things that I will have bought and used like 10 times. You know, you just kind of go. That's the whole problem with this Black Friday madness. You know, you think, oh, at this price, like, how can I let it go? And then you buy it cheap, and then it sits.
That's how they get you.
It's crazy. I realized
something about the sale, you know, it just
I just get overwhelmed. I mean, I love shopping for deals. We'll talk about this during the show, but I love shopping deals all the time. But man, Black Friday is just
yeah, it's like drinking through a fire hose.
Oh my gosh. It's just like, yeah, no, I'm good. I did, you know, I'm doing this PC build so I can join Tim in VR. That's another scary thing. Like, I think I'm going to use VR just like 3 times. I put all this money in. Now the PC will be good, but I put all this money into it, and then I'll be like, it's not really my place. So,
well, let me ask you this. I don't know much about VR, but I know that like now you have like VR hangouts, kind of like we're doing here. And so if you get a VR thing where, you know, instead of us seeing this camera angle of you, it almost like we could do this and we're almost like in the room with each other. So I think right now you just look like, you know, a cartoon avatar, but
I think it's gonna get better.
I feel like one of these days we're gonna be looking at CGI versions of ourselves hanging out in a room doing this kind of thing.
It's very possible. It's one of the things I don't, and we'll talk about this, but it's one of the things I don't want to be left behind on. Like, I don't want that to get out early and not know, you know, gaming got away from me, which I'm kind of glad, but gaming got away from me a little bit, and I don't want VR to get away from me.
Well, it's still kind of, as long as you're keeping your ear to the ground, like it's still kind of being refined.
It's super early. Yeah.
Right now, and like the platforms keep changing and they keep releasing new equipment, and so at some point you want to wait for it to level out and then let the prices come down a little bit.
Yeah.
And then get in on that level where the consistency of equipment and hardware is kind of better.
Yeah. I don't disagree. I don't disagree. All right, let's get this thing. We've both had a long 2 days. So we'll power through this thing and get you back to the family here. But thanks for coming out.
Yep.
Let me do this thing. This is the Average Guy Network, and you have found Home Gadget Geeks show number 553, recorded on November 25th, 2022. Here at Home Gadget Geeks, we cover all the favorite tech gadgets that find their way into your home. News, reviews, product updates, and conversation, all for the average tech guy. I'm your host, Jim Collison, broadcasting live from the AverageGuy.tv studios here in a beautiful Bellevue, Nebraska. I spent most of the day outside. In fact, my son Phil is with me here tonight. We were supposed to have Samantha, Sammie, as we call her. She was not feeling well, and Phil said he would jump in. But Phil, pretty sweet 2 days here in Nebraska, right? Getting outside.
Yep. For sure.
Yeah, lots of fires, lots of consuming. I think the traditional, Thanksgiving meals. We're going to talk about that here in a second, but of course, we'll post a show with a few show notes, not a ton, but a few show notes out at theaverageguy.tv. Big thanks to Dave Hamilton from Mac Geek Gab, who joined me 2 weeks ago. I took the week off last week, just in preparation for everything that was going on, but Dave's an awesome guest. Hope to have him back in all things Mac. If you haven't listened to that show yet, go back 552. Go back to it, and good stuff. Big thanks to Dave for coming on. Big thanks to our Patreon subscribers as well. If you're finding value, if you're not a Patreon subscriber, you're finding value in this, and you want to give some value back, join us on Patreon, theaverageguy.tv/Patreon. I mentioned it earlier. Phil, my oldest, is with me, and Phil, welcome back. It's good to have you on here.
It's always good to be here.
I was kind of wondering what the dynamic was going to be as we had Sammie on. I wanted to catch up with her. We'll have to. I told her we'll do another episode maybe around Christmas time. She's feeling better. Catch up with some things. She's, we bought her a new Mac. I wanted to do these tasting strips that she's been, this couple months
that's
old.
right.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about those. So we'll get her back on. For you and I, back in the summer, we spent a little bit of time. You got a cherry tree in your yard, and you picked some cherries, and then said, "Hey, bring some bourbon over, and let's make some bourbon cherry or some cherry bourbon." And I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical at first of, certainly those kinds of drinks go with vodka maybe, or infusing in that way. Talk a little bit about the process, because this was kind of homemade. I don't think you had any special equipment for it. Talk a little bit about the process that we did and I've got the bottle. This is regular Point Rider bourbon, and there's a sticker on the back, but we just added the cherries to it. Talk a little bit about the process.
So traditionally, this is cherry bounce is what, if you're going to Google it, technically cherry bounce can be made with technically anything. But we decided to go the whiskey route. Like you said, it's traditionally done with vodka, but we kind of went crazy this year, kind of taking advantage of just the extra knowledge we had. We had a better idea of the time frame on like picking the cherries and when you can, because you get like a 2-week window where it's like that's the optimal picking time. And then because at first some of them are just ripe enough to pick, and then you have a whole bunch that still need more time, and then the week after that you have some that are starting to go bad already, and then a whole bunch of ripe ones. So we pick all the cherries, pick as many as you need, and then it's essentially just figuring out like a cherry to sugar ratio with how much of your spirit you're using. So
because the cherries you have are pretty bitter. If you were going to go all natural, they'd be pretty tart, right?
They're pretty tart. Yeah. So we add sugar to kind of balance that out. And so there was even a little bit of trial and error with that, because the traditional cherry bounce recipe that we had was for vodka, and it worked pretty well for that. So I think I backed off on the sugar, kind of hoping that like the bourbon would still be pretty prominent and the cherry flavor would just kind of mix in with it. I wasn't sure how that relationship was going to happen. I didn't know if the cherries were going to overtake everything, if it was going to be like mostly just the whiskey you're used to tasting with a hint of cherry. Like we didn't know. So we threw some mixes together. We even tried, there was a handful of them. We just threw the cherries in, added the sugar, mixed it up,
right?
Threw it on the shelf. And then we did a couple of batches where we cut the cherries up in half, cooked them with the sugar and a little bit of lemon juice until it started getting a little syrupy. And then threw it in the whiskey and then bottled it, threw it on the shelf. And then we let those sit for about 6 months and then strained them, filtered them out, bottled them.
6/14/2022 was when we bottled this one. Sugar Light was then you got one. You're showing a High West.
Yeah, so this is the High West Double Rye. Most of us would agree this was probably one of the better ones, but they all came out pretty good. I would say
they did. This Point Rider, by the way, we're going to talk about some bourbons here in just a second, but this Point Rider I can get for like $14 or $15. It's a very inexpensive bourbon that we've really liked, and it's one we just kind of keep on the shelf for various things like this. If we like to make a Kentucky lemonade is kind of what we call it, a little bit of lemonade mead and a Point Rider or something with a twist or whatever, right? It would just allows you to kind of have a bottle around. I think I had one and I bought one and brought it over so we could do some mixes. It was literally when you were cooking these cherries down, it was just in a pan. I mean, it wasn't like we're using any special equipment to do this. No special equipment, no measuring things, just kind of put some stuff together, measure out the sugar.
I had to pit all those cherries.
Yeah.
That honestly was the hardest part of the cooked ones.
Right. Yeah.
But
by hand.
Yeah. And they the longer they sit on the tree, if you don't like use any chemicals or like spray for them, they get worms in them. And so some people get a little bit weird by that, but like honestly, once the batch is done, if you find worms in it, like it's sitting in 40% alcohol, so like filter it out, it's gonna be fine. But when you're pitting the cherries, you get the opportunity to also like get rid of the worms. So you're not cooking those too.
Well, the timing on this was good. This was June. We're out there. It's nice. June in Nebraska is great. Putting these together and then setting them on the shelf. And I remember thinking, like, you were like, yeah, we're going to drink these at Thanksgiving. And I was like, man, that's a long ways away. Well, Thanksgiving was yesterday and it was fun to have. I think we drank a lot more than we anticipated, or that you maybe anticipated. Do you have any left? We did.
Oh, yeah.
You do. Okay. You do have
we
some
have some.
left, right?
Yeah. I think we got through about half of it, which is a lot.
It was a lot. It was a lot. It was a good time. Yeah, and it was. You know what? It was more delicious. I mentioned this earlier. I was skeptical that bourbon would mix well. I don't know why. I used lemon. I do a lemon twist in a bourbon, and that's really delicious. So the tartness of the cherries kinds of works.
And if you listen to enough people talk about whiskey tasting, especially with bourbon, like you'll hear cherry notes get brought up all the time. Mm-hmm. So that's where I didn't have any doubt about it complementing it, but the tart cherries, a lot of people use like the sweet cherries.
Yeah.
Like the bigger ones and the darker ones, and they'll do those instead of the ones we had. But it's cool that it's just growing in my backyard. So figuring out especially if it's a home run recipe, like having that availability for free is pretty sweet. So.
For someone who's not a bourbon fan, I would say it would be a great bourbon to have them try, because it's not the tartness kind of masks a little bit of that bourbon. You can still at least taste it, at least the ones I've been tasting.
Yeah. Well, and the sugar does too. Sugar helps a lot.
I was asking you last night about maybe that bringing the ABV down a little
sure
bit.
It does.
40, I think Point Rider's 40. It's right at 40. So you would think maybe a 5 to 7% drop in that.
Probably, if I had to guess,
low 30s.
It has to, between the amount of sugar that goes in there and
it's
the
a sugar bomb. It's a sugar bomb for sure. Yeah.
But it's not like, at the same time, it's still not too sweet.
No.
It's got a decent, surprisingly, it has a pretty decent balance. So I also had the advantage of, I'm aging them here at the house, and so every couple of months I crack them open and taste them. And I think at about the 3 to 4 month window, I added a little more sugar. And then actually, I think a week after we made each batch, we went on, I picked them a little bit early, probably like 2 or 3 days earlier than I wanted to. And then we went on a trip. That's the reason I did it. Went on a trip. When we came back, I found a whole bunch of like awesomely ripe cherries in the tree still. And so I went out there and picked a whole bunch. And then I added a bunch of extra cherries to all the mixtures. And so there was that, and then the added sugar. And so I got to tweak it a little bit here and there, and then experience it as it sits. And it basically, with these, everybody says the longer the better. So we could even let them go until Christmas, and we might have gotten a slightly different experience at that point too. But
yeah, the whiskey's not aging anymore, but certainly the flavor,
it's just the maturation.
Yeah,
I guess, with the cherries and
no, it was super delicious. It got me kind of thinking. This is the season. Bourbons are super hot right now. Like they're on. Over the last couple years, everybody's drinking bourbon, and when I've talked about it to people, many folks there's so many now, so many choices. They just don't know what to do. They like, and it got me thinking, one, this is a season, you might be gifting a bourbon to a friend. That makes a great gift, right? Most really good bourbons are under $50, and that makes for 30 to 50 makes for a pretty reasonable gift. One of the things I've noticed is that Phil, our local wall-to-wall wine, which is our big box liquor store, when I was out with Ed Sullivan in Boston, New Hampshire has state-run liquor stores. They're all gigantic, which is super great. But here in Nebraska, this was kind of our first real big box. And the interesting thing is especially as we think about the Black Friday conversation, I actually enjoy going to wall more. It's the one store left I want to go to in person for some reason that I don't want to do online. It doesn't seem like the online alcohol sales is a great experience, right? I mean, it's just not as good. What is it about going into the store, do you think?
Well, sometimes you develop relationships with some of the people that work there, and then they can help you pick stuff, or like maybe clue you into some trends in the market that you're not aware of, and stuff like that. Like, if you're that interested, like,
right,
which that's kind of the level that at least I'm at, where I kind of pay attention to that stuff. And I'm one that, like, I have a hard time narrowing it down to like 3 to 5. I think I have like 40 bottles, and it, like, within like my cabinet, and like I keep my scotches down here next to my desk for some reason. But and it's just I like seeing like all the options, and you'll go in there and certain things are marked down one day. A $50 bottle all of a sudden is 20, and you're like, oh, hopping on that. And so, and you get to see stuff come and go. They do like what's becoming super popular is the barrel picks. And so, like, these companies or the store have representatives that will go to the distillery, and they will pick out an entire barrel, and then they bottle all of it, and then they have it there at the store. So, like, somebody picked that out obviously with a specific palate, but they are also thinking about the consumer when they're doing that. And you get different flavor profiles from that. A lot of times they're a little bit higher in the alcohol percentage, and so it feels a little more personal and a little more special. And that's one of the fun parts too, because every couple of months you go in there and they have a different set of picks, and they'll usually have like 7 or 8 of them available, and they'll cycle through those, and the regular stock will cycle. You'll see stuff one week that you didn't see the last. They have their case that's locked up where you'll see like your more special stuff pop up in there that goes really fast. Stuff like your Blantons and a lot of that Buffalo Trace stuff, or like the Elijah Craig barrel proofs are, they release those 3 times a year, and there's, those are cool because somehow I keep finding them, but I've seen 1 bottle of Blantons like all year, and I would rather drink this any day of the week. But anyways,
we have one at our house. You can just always come over here.
And that's part of it too. Is like I always know I have, like, if I want to compare it, like that's the only reason.
Yeah.
That it's great to have around. I like comparing it, but anyways,
I've actually spent some time thinking through. I went through a phase where I was buying a bunch, and then I said, okay, I can't drink these as fast as I was buying them. Right. And then I said, okay, I'm going to set a $20 limit on a bottle. And I thought that'll slow me down. Not a chance. Like out at Wall to Wall, they're always running something pretty good for $20. And then I was like, okay, I just need to stop going to the store, because that's I get there and I'm like, well, I can't miss out on this. Fill in the blank on whatever it is. Yeah, it's just one of those things. I've really enjoyed going. I've just enjoyed going to the store more than to me, the online shopping experience for bourbons, whiskeys, whatever, just isn't. I just don't like it. I don't know why. I prefer to go in person. As we think about the holidays, let's think about maybe 3 to 5 recommendations as we're thinking about bourbons to try or bourbons for gifts. What do you think? What are some good ones that you'd kind of go with? Let's just say under $50.
Yeah. So I'm gonna give a disclaimer where one of the reasons I have a hard time with this is because I understand everybody's palate's going to be different. Everybody has different responses to, how high of the alcohol percentage is. And then just like taste in general is so subjective. So I would say, based on my experience with other people, what people say online, my own experiences with these things too, there is still a ton of options that, depending on what you got going on, what kind of money you want to spend. Also, like if that person is a whiskey enthusiast or like enjoys bourbon, then I think any one of like these 5 would probably be like, they would be like, that's like you'd get like brownie points or respect points or whatever for grabbing these, having not known much about whiskey. But then to the average drinker, they actually might come across pretty well. So one of my go-tos, especially for comparisons and just like baseline stuff, is Maker's Mark Cask Strength. You could even like add in just a basic Maker's Mark too. Like if you've got like a beginner, but if you got people that are like regularly drinking whiskey or like more regularly, then the Maker's Cask Strength is kind of hard to beat on a lot of levels, because around here it's $35 and it's spanking the pants off of like a lot of $60 whiskeys easy. 1792.
Hold on before you go.
Sure. Go ahead.
Good presentation. Like it's dipped in red wax. Like lots of people know Makers. Like that's a good. That's a pretty good, and that's a line. They've I don't know, 5 or 6 different. You have to go in there and kind of look through. Don't always just go by price, but a very nice presentation. And most, I shouldn't say this most. a lot of bars, if you go and get an old fashioned, Makers is what is what they use. Just ask them, what's your house, what's your house bourbon, and they'll kind of let you know. But Makers gets used. I think their just regular version gets used a lot for that. So makes a good Makers makes a good gift. And yes, they do individually. They have people who dip those and individually dip them. I was watching a YouTube video talking about dipping techniques for the
there's a twist. There's a little twist in there. It's kind of like when you're pouring too, to like keep it from dripping off the side. Like there's that whole yeah, that's one of those like satisfying videos to watch. Watching those guys on the line just dipping those things, and like they're every 2 seconds they're dipping a new bottle, and that's kind of cool.
I'd make it.
And that's one of those too. Like I actually had I stayed away from Makers for a long time because I thought it was just another Jack Daniels, which I'm coming around on Jack a little bit, but in a different thing. But Makers is definitely, I'd say it was a pretty good quality product. And then they have multiple offerings now just besides their standard like Maker's Mark. And so one of the good things to look at is like if you got somebody that is kind of knows their way around whiskey, go into like the Maker's 46 or like the Maker's Cask Strength. Like as those ABVs start going up, then they're going to taste better to like a more experienced whiskey drinker. If you got the beginner, just go with the standard Makers. Another one that's really, really good, I'd say just across the board, is 1792. It's pretty readily available around here anyways. And I think across the country, it's pretty readily available too. And then I would say this one's a little bit harder to find, but the more time that passes, the more that I love this whiskey. And it's Tin Cup 10-year. So it sounds stupid, right? The name Tin Cup to me but it's a harken back to some type of labor force in Colorado, and they would have these like tin cups on their bottles that they would use, and so there's this whole homage to them. And it's sourced whiskey too, if that means anything to anyone. But it's the alcohol percentage compared to most of the stuff I like is pretty low. It's about 43%. I'd say on average, I'm usually like above 50 for what I enjoy. So that stuff just keeps surprising me about how flavorful it is for like how low that alcohol percentage is. And so that does run about $50. So like, but it's like, I actually don't mind paying $50 for it because it tastes so good. But that's one, like that might be a really good one for like beginners and then like you got this little tin cup thing that screws onto the top that when you're done, you got like this cool looking kind of rugged little shot glass, and that's kind of fun too.
You surprised me with that one when you a tin cup when you brought it over, and we tasted it then, and then you said I'm going to leave it, and you're like, if you want to have some, I mean you can. So I shared it. I drank it a couple times with some other folks just to say, hey, have you tried this tin cup? And it's a cool bottle. I mean, it is a good, it's really tasty. And I think would make a great gift. This is the one like
to almost anybody. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're going to give it away, it's very, very, very palatable, very tasty, easy to drink, you get a little right. Shot glass with it. So
and the bottle itself isn't the most flashy presentation. The tin cup thing on the top is like the coolest thing about it. But what's inside is really what like the experience is. So that stuff's really nice. I also really like the Russell's Reserve 10-year. So it's a Wild Turkey product that's kind of like, I wouldn't say rebranded. It's just like a different division. So it gives a little bit more of a different taste profile than like your standard like Wild Turkey. Some people have some reservations to Wild Turkey because like some years back, it was kind of like the college party whiskey, and everybody got kind of like Fireball is now, I would say, in a way, which Wild Turkey is a little bit more hardcore. So I guess I have a little more respect for those people. But anyways, but yeah, like I wouldn't unless you've had a bad experience and you got like a taste aversion thing or whatever's going on. Don't shy away from wild turkey. Wild turkey and Russells are super, super high quality. Really just heavy hitters for their price range. I would throw in like an additional option for like Wild Turkey 101. A lot of times it's like 23 to 25 bucks. And I've watched a lot of videos where guys are doing blind sampling, and like Wild Turkey 101 comes out like in the top 3, sometimes wins these blinds all the time. And it's a $23 bottle, and it's beating out, you know, 50, 60, $70 bottles of whiskey. And you can sip it neat on ice. You can use it in like cocktails. Like it's really good, like Swiss Army knife whiskey, if you don't have any issues with that taste profile. And so, shoot, other than that, I think that's just 4. Cooper's Craft 100 is pretty good. That stuff is made by Brown Forman, who makes like Woodford and Old Forester. So the Cooper's Craft 100 or the Old Forester 100 are both pretty solid as well.
Yeah, you got me for my birthday, you got me the 1910, the Old Forester 1910 and 1920.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we unanimously, I think that the 1910 won out the day. Super smoky, very delicious, a little over $50. That's going to be one I'm going to keep.
Yeah.
That'll be a keeper for me.
If you like that kind of oak, kind of woody, like smoky presence in it, then that's definitely the one that's, I would say, is going to be the best. Yeah. The Cooper's Craft has that vibe a little bit. It's not as aggressive on those flavor profiles though. So it's a little more well balanced. You get more of the caramel brown sugar, standard bourbon stuff, but it's just packed full of flavor.
Yeah.
And it's just a little bit more rounded out and balanced versus the 1910s. Got a pretty good oak.
Yeah.
You know, old whiskey flavor to it.
I think I'll add one more, and it's for the beginner, and it's our kind of our house bourbon, which is Jefferson's. And you know, we get 25. It's probably 35 in a lot of places. But that's a good, man. You just can't go wrong. It comes in a really unique bottle. It's got Thomas Jefferson on the front, so just remember Jefferson's. I got a couple bottles, empty bottles of it up here, and a couple different flavors. I would probably say they get some premium offerings that are pretty pricey. We kind of wait till we find those on good deals now. I think now that we've drank more bourbons, it's kind of like, oh, okay, well, you know, their rye is $90. They've got one for $150. You kind of go, right?
Yeah, like the Jefferson Ocean's kind of a novelty thing.
Yeah.
And I think
they floated out at sea.
There's some good batches in there, like they're good, but like I don't know if they're $80 good or $90 good. Now, if you can find like a store pick single barrel of the Jefferson's Reserve for like $50, I'd say besides just the standard 40% ABV Jefferson's, I think those are the two that I would recommend more than anything.
Great starter, good family bourbon. Like, and if you're going to have a bunch of people trying it, Brian says, I picked up a bottle of Jefferson's with your recommendation. Haven't broken the seal yet, but look forward to enjoying it. Yeah. And I'll be honest. I mean, my palate's changed over the last 2 years, and you know, it's just a different flavor for me now. And I kind of go, oh, this would be good. I've had some folks over who are like, hey, I don't really drink bourbons much. Okay, try this one. Tell me what you think. It's smooth and buttery and kind of delicious. And so that's another good one I'll add to it. Well, it's coming up on that time of the year. I know we're a tech show, but Phil and I have spent so much time thinking about, talking about, and drinking bourbons. I thought it'd be a good during this holiday season, just maybe change up your gift giving a little bit, and for a bourbon enthusiast, or even for one who's just getting into it, because a lot of folks are. There's some good recommendations right there. What else, Phil?
I just wanted to throw in another comment before we switch topics. One of the things that is like a big mindset for me that I always try to encourage everybody with, especially when it comes to whiskey, is just like always keeping an open mind, not having biases. And if you've had bad experiences, you know, related to parties over drinking, like we totally get that. But if not, having an open mind is, I would say, paramount. And the second thing is knowing that everybody's palate is different. Even your own palate is going to change over time, or like one night to the next, you're going to experience sometimes a whiskey in a completely different way. I've had whiskeys taste one way one night, and then we tried again the next night, and certain things affect that, and then it tastes different in a way. And then the other thing I always encourage people to do, and it usually this is the best way to drink whiskey, is sharing it with people. So if you dive into the online whiskey world, those are the three things you're probably going to hear preached the most. And it's kind of like a rejuvenation of like the whiskey culture, or like whatever you want to call it. Cause for a while it was a bunch of hotheads that it has to be 60% alcohol and it's got to be Pappy Van Winkle. Otherwise it's crap. And so we're trying to get away from that. And so trying to get away from the assumptions and the judgments and the we just want to figure out a way to get more people to enjoy it. Mm-hmm. Right. If it's not your thing, it's not your thing, but at least give it a chance. Like, have an open mind. So,
yeah. And it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing during the holidays in particular, because I think your palate can also be influenced by the environment around you. Right.
100%.
And so, you know, you might be out, hotel bar, might be a good place to, if you look up on the shelf and they've got a few good bourbons up there. Hold on, sorry about that. This pizza place that we even go to, he's got a few good bourbons up there, and you might even just ask, like, what do you think? And you can do a pour there, and oftentimes $5 to $8 a pour, and you can try it out without committing anything, which is a pretty great way to, kind of a nice way to get it done. So give that a try. Some things to consider over the holiday season. Maybe it's time to visit. If you're thinking about these things, this is, Phil, one of the hardest parts, I think, for some, is to go into if you go into a store, liquor store, say, what's your favorite? Like, what do you like? Go in with somebody who knows, and get some recommendations from that. It just kind of works out better. This, like I said, it's one of the few things I still like doing in person. I was just thinking today, I was like, I wonder if I can get out to wall to wall. Today I'm like, no, I don't really need to. I don't need to buy any more. I think we've got plenty for a while, but give those a try, and there's some recommendations there for you. Every year we, if you followed me on Facebook in years past, I haven't posted pictures like that in a while, but we have kind of smoked the turkey on the grill. Mike Howard got me using the amazing smoking tube to get that done. And so for years I've been trying to kind of master that process of, we make a tinfoil envelope for the turkey. We do a bacon weave that we put on top. We mix it with Italian dressing and some Heinz 57 and all the various, flavors that you want to put on there. Little beer. This year, we put an apple in there and some garlic, and it always turns out, I think, pretty well. I think, Phil, I'm not sure you guys liked turkey, just to be honest with you, when you guys were younger. And then when we started making the turkey this way, I started getting oh, Dad, this is really good. Do you think there was a switch there?
I can't say personally. I don't remember ever having a time where I wouldn't say that I didn't like turkey. Like, I always ate it.
Yeah.
And so I don't remember ever not liking it. But I do know there was definitely a switch for and it could have been a placebo, but I don't know. 15 years now. Yeah. 15 years now, however long it's been, it's always good. Yeah, I would say the first time you did it, there was a definite switch in like, oh, there's something different going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is next level. So it's been good. It's been really good.
The first couple years I did it, I didn't really, until I started having Mark Robson on the show, I didn't really understand the power of temp and having a good thermometer. And so we used some, just use some of the pop-up ones that came with it. And Mark got me thinking about temperature. So a couple years ago, I think last year for Christmas, 2 years ago, maybe, Sarah bought me the Meter, Meater. It's a Wi-Fi enabled or Bluetooth enabled temp on the tip and ambient temperature on the outside. Super fancy. They're like $100. Although it's Black Friday, probably getting 30% off right now today. If you go buy one today, they're always running deals on those things on the app. I also bought, I think before that, I had bought the Weber iGrill, and I think it was iGrill just before that, and then Weber bought them, I think, and incorporated them into the Weber family. So this year with the new Austin XL smoker, I wanted to do a traditional smoked turkey as well. Wasn't gonna take a chance on a big turkey in the smoker and have it not turn out. Like that was not going to happen. I can't. We had 14 people over. I can't have a bird going down and not have a backup. So we still did the traditional on the grill, although I couldn't find it. I was disappointed. I couldn't find my smoking tube. Oh, I brought it over to your house. Yeah, you've got my smoking tube. Yeah, okay. So I was looking for it. I was like, oh, so it was awesome even without the awesome smoking tube this year. I'm not sure the way I cook it in the envelope. I make this envelope of tin foil, bacon on top. I'm not sure smoke can penetrate all that bacon anyways. I think the bacon gets most of the smoke. By the way, I take that bacon off after it's cooked. I take the bacon off, separate it, and then put it back on the grill and re-season the grill with that bacon. And we bring it in, and that's part of the hors d'oeuvre. We just have a bacon hors d'oeuvre, which is pretty tasty. So this year with the Austin XL Pit Boss Austin XL, I went full smoke and threw some garlic and an apple and some butter, and I bought a butter injector for $10 on Amazon, just a cheap one because I didn't know if this was going to work. And it's really weird to stick that in the bird and push it down and watch it swell up with butter and olive oil. Yeah, it was a little weird to do it. Then just took a butter and oil basting on the outside. That's it. Maybe a little salt and pepper, and put it right on the grill. So it was really side by side comparison. Use the iGrill meat thermometer on the smoked turkey. Use the meter on the grilled turkey. Grilled went about an hour faster than the smoked skin tasted that. This is I think the whole idea of smoking the bird is to get some crispy, tasty, get some smoke into that bird. But both work great and were great. Just God, they're just handy to have. And I kind of wish I had both meters or both iGrill. I got one or the other. I got to wait for one of them to break before I go with the other. But Phil, I cut those. The other thing I did differently this year is I bought a big long boning knife, I think is what they call it. It's kind of a flexible long knife that that you can use for fish. And I got that and got it right next, like for the breast meat, right next to the bone, and basically just got it all off the bone, a whole breast. And then I put that on on the cutting tray, and instead of cutting with the bird, I cut against the grain, basically is what I did. So I cut pieces, then I cut pieces off of it that way. I don't know if that made any difference. A couple of the videos I watched on YouTube as I was getting ready for this said that's the best way to cut your turkey, is not off the turkey direct, but cut the meat off the bone and then slice it. There was not any white meat left over at the end of the night, by the way. By the time I went to put things away, both could you taste any difference between the two? Did you see, or did you notice at all?
So I'm pretty sure I could tell which one like you put on the smoker. And it definitely was pretty buttery.
Yeah.
And it was really good. So like, listen, like even that turkey would I feel like would slay most people's turkey.
Mm.
I'd be willing to bet that our turkey game is well above a majority of the population. It's got to be. As much as I hear people complain about turkey and they're like, "Oh, ham is better," and it's like you haven't had good turkey then. Like it just hasn't been done right. And people are coming up with all kinds of crazy ways to cook them and fry them, and they're dropping them in the deep fryers and starting grease fires and all that stuff.
Yeah, that's pretty good though.
But
That is pretty good.
we're on to something. Like you need to YouTube. You need to figure out a way to like make a YouTube video
yeah.
out of like the way you cook a turkey.
Making it, yeah.
And I feel like if that got some steam, like
there's a lot of videos out there. I watched about 15 of them on smoking this. Bob gives me the right words. So he said, I made turkey breast medallions. It's great. And
so
yes, that's what you call it.
Assuming like that's the way you cut it, and that's like, is that what that means?
Yeah, he says softer as you're not chewing against the grain.
Okay.
And so yeah, you basically just take the breast meat off, set it down, and then cut it.
Interesting.
That way,
because it did feel like it was pretty tender.
Yeah.
Right. It definitely was not lacking, juiciness by any means.
I think you're cutting the grain when you do it that way, right? Because the grain goes across the bird that way, and so you're cutting against it.
These kinds of analytical thoughts are better when like I know beforehand like all the intricacies of like why those things are happening, so then I can pay attention to like, oh, you do it this way more for like mouthfeel, and you do it this way because it like it changes this kind of type of taste profile. And I didn't know those things. Like I literally just went in knowing we always have good turkey, and the experience is going to be what it is, and I wasn't really paying attention to that kind of stuff. So they were both good. They were both good. Like the bacon tasty. One definitely had a little bit more of like that. I would say like it was just a little bit more like rounded out and like the darker, richer flavors, and the other one was just soft and moist and buttery. Like
well, I think
like it was solid though. It was really good.
When I put it in the envelope, there's Italian dressing in there, there's the grease drippings from the bacon. It creates all this moisture, and I think it ups the temp around the turkey, and so you get we're really careful to watch both the inside and the outside temp. And I think that turkey was easier for me to cut just in general. The legs came off a little bit easier. The meat came apart a little bit easier. Deboning it at the end was a lot easier. Then the one I cooked on the smoker, little harder. It was still delicious. Don't get me wrong. It was still delicious. But I made, and then both of them I wrapped up. The other thing is the grill was done first. So I wrapped that up and put it in a cooler, wrapped it in tinfoil, wrapped it in towels, put it in the cooler. Then an hour later, the grill one was done. So that the smoker was done. The grilled turkey sat in the cooler for an extra hour as opposed to the one that was, so that even that could have made a difference in it. I tell you what, I liked the grilled or the wrapped version of it better than with the bacon than I liked the smoked. This year I did 2 12-pounders, which was perfect for us. Like instead of one big 18-pound or whatever, 20-pound. My dad would always buy like 25-pound or whatever. He was crazy.
And that's part of the problem too, right? Who was telling us that like the golden like weight is like 15 pounds or lighter,
15,
or like or was it 16, something like that? And I think that's where some people go wrong, is they get it too big of a turkey.
Yeah, well, 2 12-pounders is what we did, and that worked out great. And I put them on at 7. I probably didn't need to. I probably could have put them on at 9, and because we ate at like 2. So really good. I think if I'll have to think about it. I still may do one and the other next year, and maybe we'll pay more attention to which is which on the process or whatever. I was just afraid I was going to screw it up, but the injector was having one of those on hand is going to be handy to be able to do that. I think if I do it over again, maybe I'd practice on a chicken like the day or two before. Give that a try. We also made jerky the day before, which turned out really really good. And so we lived pretty well during Thanksgiving, and it was pretty tasty. I using both the iGrill, which is a cable, it's a corded solution, right? Just one temperature, what's on the inside, versus the meter, a little bit cheaper, not much though, versus the meter, which is completely wireless, but you get ambient and inside temperature. I like I said, I think I'm gonna break my iGrill so that I can get another meter and have those, because those are super handy. I can't, and I think we were saying this in the Discord group as well. Meter is just a great choice. Wait for Black Friday or a deal on those, because they tend to be a little pricey, but well worth having, and very delicious. We sent a lot of turkey home, and there was a little bit left. I think I have some for lunch tomorrow, so that'll be tasty as well. Phil, after Thanksgiving dinner, we went out and you cleared half of my wood pile, because we always like to do cigars in a fire, and we drank all this awesome cherry whiskey. But I've been doing, we cut a tree down. The neighbor and I share the fence, and we cut these trees down, and I had a lot of wood. And so I've been doing a lot of hand splitting. Like, so I have an axe, a hand axe. What would you call that? We'll just call it a hand axe for now.
Hatchet.
There we go. I have a hatchet, and I use it like I shouldn't. It's not made for this, but I take the hatchet, put it in the wood, and then I take a sledgehammer and I just beat it down till the thing splits in half. The hatchet's not strong enough, nor am I, in a lot of ways, to be able to hand, split this wood. You've got a lot of wood, but you've got a neighbor that's also got a pneumatic splitter, right? That's a big 20 ton splitter. Is that right?
I don't remember how much it is. It's pretty crazy. It's a $1,200 splitter.
Yeah.
And it makes light work of some pretty big logs.
Yeah.
Pretty quickly.
I've been looking at those, but I'm not going to buy one. I've kind of enjoyed the process of splitting the wood, although there's been a couple moments where that axe has kind of flown a direction. You're like, yikes. Maybe I should be wearing some chaps or something to make sure I don't chip off the front of my kneecaps or something like that. I have been looking at these splitters, though. They're kind of cast iron or something, where the circle on the top, circle on the bottom, that's got a splitter in between, and you can just take that wood and take a sledgehammer and just split it that way. That seems like in there, I don't know, $75, $100. Seems like that's maybe a little safer way to do it. I don't know. What do you think? Am I cheating by going that route?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it's basically like it's a more refined version of what you're already doing.
Yeah.
And if you're bound and determined to split wood that way, and you don't want to buy a hydraulic splitter, then obviously, like, it can only accept certain sizes of logs, right?
Yeah.
That's another humongous benefit to the hydraulic splitter. Like, I'm picking up logs that are like, it's a lot of work to get these things off the ground and get it onto the splitter, and then you're splitting into half. You're pulling one half off, you're splitting the other half down into 5-6 pieces. Do the next one. So obviously, it just kind of depends. I think with the size of wood that you're working with, something like that would probably be a little bit more advantageous and more efficient. Because the other thing too is, like, sometimes the hatchet gets stuck halfway down. You get a real tough piece of wood that isn't super dry yet, and then you got to get that freaking thing out of there, and that's a pain too. So pros and cons, right? What's the law of diminishing returns? Like, how often you splitting wood, how fast you going through it. That's the reason we have that splitter is because we've created this culture with our neighbors where we're doing fire pits all the time. We have a fireplace in like all of our houses. And so sometimes in the wintertime that can save your gas bill a little bit. And so we kind of stock up because we're going through it so often. And so two of the guys went in on an expensive splitter, and we all kind of share the workload, and we've got a source that gives us a lot of wood for free, and we're pretty lucky, honestly. I just kind of walked into this situation when I moved in, and I just try to put in as much legwork as I can, helping fill their piles while I'm filling mine. And yeah.
It's a good way to do it. Bob says, Bob Carpenter in chat says, get a wedge. There's some pretty interesting ones. And I do have an old wedge, it's a metal or whatever, iron, probably. It rusts, so it must be iron. And it's a 4-way splitter. And for a full log, it actually works pretty well. Put that thing right in the middle. It not as handy, pretty heavy, not as handy for little pieces. This is where I like the hatchet. And by the way, through this process, I realized there are wedges with handles that are designed to be hit with a sludge. And then this one is very clearly marked. It's not supposed to be, but I do it anyway. Right. I'm going to destroy this thing. And then I'm going to get the right equipment. It works well for what I do. I mean, I split a ton of wood with it. Bob also says free home gym membership, doing it by hand, at least in the upper body. And yeah, I got a cramp today. I was splitting this wood, and I'll be a little sore tomorrow. And I've gone through 2 pairs of gloves doing it. It's one of the things, the right hand on the set of gloves I have now, or I put not electrical tape, but duct tape around the fingers, the thumb and the first 2 fingers, because I've just wore through them, with that wood and hitting with the sludge and some of those kinds of things. And it's a hand sledgehammer. It's not one of the big ones. It's a little 4-pound, I think, a little 4-pound sludge. It's a pretty good system. Now that I'm good at it, I kind of watch for, I look for the checks in the wood to know that, okay, that's probably going to be a weak spot in the wood anyway. So put the hatchet on it 3 or 4 times, thing splits in half in one.
Find the grain.
Yeah. That's another area where you find the grain. And Brian says out in chat, he says duct tape, the universal solution for everything. Yeah, it works pretty well. It works pretty well, Brian. I'm not going to lie. Listen, I brought this brand new pair of gloves when I started this project with this tree. 3 trees in my neighbor's yard, right on the fence line, but on both our power lines. I paid my neighbor, who's a tree guy, just to come and cut them down. And there's a lot of wood left over. He said, "Can you just leave me some of the wood?" Right? And he's like, "Yeah, absolutely." So that first pair of gloves, brand new pair of gloves, I wore through the thumb in the first day. And I'm like, well, okay, I'm not gonna. So I just taped them up. Had mom help me get that done.
Heavier duty or glove.
Yeah,
probably said you need some better gloves now.
Better gloves. Maybe for Christmas. Maybe I'll put that on my Christmas. Really good gloves.
You told us yesterday that you didn't want anything.
You're right. I don't. I just go buy them anyways.
Right.
Well, so I have to look at that. I'll be honest. I look at that ring splitter, put the wood in, and like Bob's right. I could go with just a set of wedges and then get the wood small enough to fit in that, and then just use that wedge. Or probably be a lot safer.
If from the wedge standpoint, based on our experience with like the smaller one you have, that thing would get stuck all the time. I think the longer it is, and then the more spread out, like especially if you have like one of those 4-way wedges, the bigger it is, and like the more travel distance you have at your disposal, I think the better it's going to work.
That 4-way wedge, it's small, but it's mighty. It does a pretty nice job.
We got that thing pretty good and stuck a couple of times.
Yeah, I know.
We had to burn it out that one time.
We did burn it out. We did burn it out that one time. I was finding a rhythm too in the way I hit it. So tap, 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 and you get it down, and then just a good. Ooh, my shoulder's a little sore. And then just a good solid, thrust at the end, and usually the wood splits apart. So I haven't gotten it stuck in a while, but
I'm actually a little bit sore behind the shoulder blade today too. And like I remember
because you were splitting wood for me last night.
And I remember saying to Bree this morning, I'm like, why is that hurt? Like, you just forget like the things you do.
Yeah.
And
There's
yeah,
some
now
there's some really good high tech axes too. Like, man, an axe just isn't an axe anymore. I mean, you go to the the hardware store, man, they got some slick looking axes. And so now talk about, you got to be safe with those things. That go through a shoe in a second.
yeah.
So I don't know if I want to be out there swinging an axe.
Now I think hitting something with a hammer is definitely a little bit more accurate.
Yeah.
It's safer.
Yeah. So I was doing the Captain America thing though today. I would split it just so there was a little bit left.
Yeah.
Pull them apart.
It's fun.
Feel strong. Just as we think about wrapping this up, just kind of on the way out here. Today was Black Friday, and I did order the rest of the pieces that I need. I've been telling you guys for a while that I'm putting this VR build together. And so picked up the case today. Not any great deals on it, but they were good enough. I wanted to get moving on this build. So I picked up the case. I got the Cooler Master HAF. I ordered 128 gig of RAM. It was hard to pull the trigger on it, but I was just like, you know what? I'm just going to max this thing out from day one. I'm going to want it someday. Might as well do it now. And then I have the power supply. I guess I just got memory and because I have the board, CPU, case, memory, power supply. I'm ready to go. So we'll start putting that build together. All that stuff will come in here this week, I think, and we'll start putting that together. Uyghur is on the show. By the way, and I'll put it in the show notes. I've got a link to the parts picker, PCpartspicker.com. I've got a list for that. Here, I'll share it in the chat for those listening here if you want to go take a look at it. These are all the parts I currently have. GPU is left, and then NVIDIA made the announcement that because I was going to pick up a 3060 Ti, and then they made an announcement that they're going to change their 3060 on the next rev, and it's going to be an R6X or something like that, and it's going to be even better than it was before. And I was like, oh, well, maybe I'll wait. So I've been working with Ryan and Bob over at thinkcomputers.org to find the right time to pick up this GPU. I'm going to spend $500 or $600 on it. I kind of want to make sure I get the right one. This is one thing I want to get. I don't need to buy a 3080, but 3070 might even be in the cards, but 3060 seems to be in the right price point for me. So I'm going to be on thinkcomputers.org on December 7th. I think is the day. I should know that, but in early December, we're going to be talking about Christmas stuff, Christmas gadgets, but I'm sure I'll have some questions for him as well. So I really just have a GPU to purchase that's left, and then we'll get that build done, and then I'll start consolidating things. So Black Friday was what I was waiting for. I thought maybe there'd be a few good deals. Maybe if I'd waited on the SSD or on the NVMe hard drive, probably could have got it for maybe $10 or $15 cheaper, but it's okay. We got it done. More updates next week. Uyghur's on, and hopefully I'll have some of these parts, so we'll spend some extended time talking about it on next week's show. So come back and join us. Next Thursday. It'll be Thursday this time instead of Friday. Come back and join us next Thursday. Phil, thanks for filling in. I'm sorry. We'll get Sammie back here. Maybe that Christmas week we'll get her on. Hopefully she's feeling better. She's got a cold that's kind of knocked her down all week. She was excited to be on, and then today I went up there and I'm like, hey, 8:00, and she was like, oh yeah, no, I can't even talk. So she's coming back. But thanks for filling in.
Yeah, honestly, we might have filled the hour with just the whiskey conversation.
Oh, if I'd let it.
Had she been on here.
Oh, that's probably true. Yeah, that's probably true. Yeah, she's kind of, it's been interesting because she's kind of gotten into whiskey because of the influence. So, before, I mean, just a couple of years ago, she probably wouldn't even drink wine. And now she enjoys that with us. It is fun to have her enjoy it with us. I always enjoy that. So I'm glad she likes it. Well, with that, we are live every Thursday except the Friday after Thanksgiving. We do this show here Friday, but we are live every Thursday, 8 p.m. Central, 9 Eastern, out here at theaverageguy.tv/live. Big thanks to our Patreon subscribers. I mentioned if you want to join the Patreon group, theaverageguy.tv/Patreon, $5 plan. Thanks. If we're adding value, that's one way to give it back. Appreciate doing that. Dave McCabe is coming the week after that. So Dave will be on. He's got some interesting things going on in his life. So we'll catch up with Dave on December 8th. Aaron Lawrence is coming back in kind of a pre-Christmas show. And then I have the 22nd open. I may put Sammie in that spot there in December. So come join us live Thursday nights. If you haven't been out here before, do it again. Everybody have a safe holiday weekend. Or a safe Christmas time. Don't go up on your roof and do lights and stuff. You can if you want to. Just be safe doing it. Thanks for coming out. If you're listening live, thanks for coming out. With that, we'll say goodbye, everybody. All right, chat. Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Brian, for jumping in here. It was good to have you guys kind of let's see. There was one other. Who else did I see? Bob, Brian, Ken, I guess I saw a little bit earlier. Yeah. Good seeing you guys. Phil and I are going to go rest now after I got asked the podcast coach in the morning, so I can't rest too long, but be back up. At least I don't have to go to work in the morning. Guys, I'll give you the remainder of the evening to take advantage of the Black Friday. They're ending tonight, allegedly. And we'll see you guys. We'll see you guys next week. Take care, everybody.